Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, on this Thursday, September the 7th. The birthdays of both Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell, two numbers that should hang in the rafters in Cleveland someday. Kevin Love, a long career, 9+ seasons with the Land, got the chip, third in double-doubles, had that 34-point first quarter. He's only played one season so far. Donovan Mitchell, no big deal. Most 30-point games in a season, broke the Cavs record, scoring 71, broke LeBron's single-game franchise record on that putback off his own missed free throw. No biggie, 55 in the second half, also had 11 assists. Who cares? It's nothing. 71, 8, and 11. And no worries.
My
Got
bad.
background sound. I'm going to introduce Dan Palyo in just a moment, but Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Love, some great careers, and Mateen Cleaves also. He only played 4 games, but a Cav is a Cav nonetheless. We're going to be talking about obscure Cavs. Played 4 games in the 03-04 season, starting twice with LeBron James. So you share the court with the king. You are relevant. We got Dan Palyo coming up after this on Network 216. Well, Dan, with the alarm and that sound going off pretty much tells me that you're as eager as I am to really get this thing going. So it's a pleasure to welcome you on today to Across the Cavs.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, man. Huge Cavs fan and excited to talk some Cavs hoops today.
And Dan, I need to talk a little bit about your background. You've been covering basketball for a long time. You've done very well with betting content. You were the Fantasy Sports Writers Association Basketball Writer of the Year just 2 years ago. So we talk a little bit about that and what makes you love basketball so much.
Yeah, thanks. I won the award a couple years ago, covering basketball mainly from a fantasy standpoint and from betting and DFS. But it's just a huge basketball fan my entire life. Played basketball growing up. Followed the Cavs since I was, old enough to pay attention to pro sports. So we're going back all the way into the 80s and the early 90s teams. I know I've got my Steelers hat on today, so I hope Ohio people aren't upset. I grew up in a unique area of Western Pennsylvania where we didn't have basketball. Pittsburgh, we don't have basketball, pro basketball, and I grew up about halfway between Pittsburgh and Cleveland in a area where we had lots of Cleveland and Pittsburgh fans, and so I'm a unique person who roots for the Steelers and I root for the Pirates, but I also grew up watching the Cleveland Indians, I guess Guardians now, and a huge Cavs fan. So I'm a little bit of a hybrid Cleveland Pittsburgh fan that you would only really find maybe in a certain specific part of Eastern Ohio and Western Pennsylvania.
Well, funnily enough, Cleveland Browns fans don't like me either. I am a Ravens fan, but I very rarely talk about that on the pod. So we're all kind of rivals. I like the Ravens, you the Steelers, the rest of the network, all the group chat. It's Browns, Browns, Browns. I'll promote Browns because I do support Cleveland sports across the board. Obviously, only the Cavs are my favorite in the given sport, but it's going to be fun when they get together. And I'm getting dissed on by 15 people, and I'm just like, but nonetheless.
AFC North should be crazy this year, by the way. I think all the teams are pretty good, so who knows what happens,
Cleveland, Cincy, week 1, Joe Burrow. Shout out Matthew Dellavedova, Joe Burrow's favorite player. His birthday's tomorrow. I'll have a clip on YouTube out. I already got my scheduled Delhi content to go out across Twitter. I wear his jersey every year. Might have to go Australian national jersey for this Dellavedova birthday.
That's impressive.
I had the NBL on the way, and then they told me they ran out as it was supposed to ship. So I was going to have 5. We could have had a starting lineup of Delhi jerseys: Cavs, Bucks, Kings, Australia, and NBL. But I'm going to have to wait till the season starts, I guess.
You're going to love my pick for a favorite random Cavs guy that you gave me then, I guess.
Yeah, we'll start right there. Who are some of your favorite obscure Cavs players from over the years?
I guess I was going to say Dellavedova. I mean, I didn't even know you were a huge Delhi guy. I didn't dig into your background too much, so it's just a coincidence that I was going to say, how could you not love Dellavedova, man? He was such a fun player, blue collar guy, like big time, some big time plays that he made in some of those years where it was like, he was such a grinder. Like, there's no way that guy should have had probably the length of career that he did with his athletic ability, but he was just such a grinder. I literally loved his game.
Yeah, there really wasn't much he didn't do. Throws the best lobs. He's got a floater that Rajon Rondo and Darren Williams in their prime might even be jealous of. And the finals moment huge too. The Bulls closeout game when he dropped 19. The Hawks closeout game. It was the Hawks closeout game. He had 19. There was the Bulls game where he had 3 more points than LeBron at one point in that game when he had 15.
That's great. Yeah. He was he was clutch. He was like likable. You could tell the teammates loved him. Like he was just that guy. I was a huge fan of his. He made the most out of his ability, and he had like that real like niche little game. He had that floater, and he was a good 3-point shooter. Like defensively, like was up in guys, was a pest on defense. Like was just gave you all those kind of like little intangible things too.
I mean, on the obscure side, do you call like the Bill Lambiers from the Cavs time, or the Bill Lambiers or the Walt Frazier's? Do you call that obscure because of how quick it was, or do you really when you remember their careers? Obviously, Walt Frazier's the Nick Legend. I know it wasn't as good in Cleveland, and Bill Lambier before the Bad Boys days was a Cav. We started that, and then we traded him to Detroit. So, do you look at that kind of as obscure, or just guys in Cleveland?
The other guy on my list for like obscure I was going to bring up was Sean Kemp, in that like. Did people like when you think of Sean Kemp and you think of like the awesome version of Sean Kemp and the Sonics for his entire 20s, and then he came to Cleveland at 29 or whatever and had like one or two good statistical seasons, but like was on bad teams and was just like never the same after he got hurt, and kind of the beginning when he went to Cleveland was like the beginning of his decline as a player, and by 32 or 33 out of the league. But like Sean Kemp was like an amazing player in Seattle, and then came to Cleveland and just kind of disappeared. I was thinking of him too, in that along those lines.
And maybe similarly for me, I'd go Anton Jameson, because the Cavs got him on the back end of what was an incredible 20,000 point, 8,000 rebound career as the sixth man of the year. He's with Dallas, Washington, Golden State, kind of those heydays, and he did a lot. Obviously, he wasn't horrible, but he wasn't anywhere close. Kind of like when the Cavs had Dwayne Wade or Shaq, they still had a little bit to give, but they weren't ready to be championship pieces, unfortunately, at that point.
No. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, there's been a lot of guys in this especially in the last couple, with the two different LeBron teams where they brought in at the end of their careers that just weren't, they weren't the players that they were in their careers, and they didn't have a whole lot to give. But yeah, Sean Kemp sticks out in my mind just from growing up and watching him in that era. It was a rough era for Cavs in between the Brad Daugherty teams and then the first set of LeBron teams.
Yeah, that 97-98 season was kind of a blip where a very young team, Seth Henderson, Derek Anderson, finally get a healthy Z.
Yeah.
And they're able to sneak in 47-35, top 5 defense. Even took a game from Indiana. Could have gone either way, but they didn't have the experience necessary to really actually act on it. But it was something. But I imagine that for a lot of fans and for yourself in that era, that type of season gave you a little bit of life and helped ease what would happen after that season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of gave you a chance to dial back into the fan. Like if they didn't have that year or a couple of those years where they were at least in contention or at least decent, it's easy to tune them out for a while. Like, I'm sure, Indians fans can remember the 80s, the major league years before the good Indians teams of the 90s. Like they were just easy to ignore for a long time, or Pirates fans could relate to like all of the late 90s and early 2000s where they were terrible. And it's easy if you're bad for 5, 6, 7 years in a row, you're going to lose fans, even in the most passionate fan bases.
And then obviously we talk about obscure players, but what trade in Cavs history, I guess on a more serious note, had you the most excited at the time that it happened?
So I was looking at this question and I thought that the easy answer would be like the Kevin Love trade, because I was super excited. Kevin Love coming over was like a guy who I respected and loved his game and was doing great stuff in Minnesota. And I thought was a perfect piece. And I think he really was a perfect piece to put along LeBron for those teams. A little bit like sneakier one I thought was actually the Mo Williams trade, because I was a huge Mo Will fan when he was with Bucks, and I really loved his game. And I think he fit really well too with LeBron on those teams. And he was like a kind of a favorite of mine, guy that could come, like wasn't a pass first, was more like a shoot first point guard, right? Really fit better, right? With around LeBron as a guy who could just be the scorer. And so I liked the Mo Williams deal a lot too when it first happened. I thought it was going to end up kind of catapulting them. But yeah, those would be the two that I had circled: the Kevin Love deal, Mo Williams deal.
And then from DeJuan Wagner to Mo Williams to Kyrie to Colin, they just kept getting number twos that come in. And obviously DeJuan Wagner injuries killed him. But think about the potential of all 4 guys rock the same number in a 15-year span. It's incredible. that they could keep running that number 2 gauntlet. We'll see if it comes back again or not. For
Yeah.
me, for my just in real time reaction, it sounds obscure, but it goes back, was actually the Dellavedova trade when they got him from the Bucks. It was very small. They didn't give up too much. They brought him in with John Henson. They flipped George Hill. And the reason I was so excited was because of how much I loved his first tenure. And I understood. I was happy when the Bucks paid him that money. He absolutely earned it. And it was great that he had that opportunity going undrafted. And then in his second year, they couldn't pay him big. So he took 1 more year. They won the title, then he left. And I just think getting him back for the culture and helping with some of the younger guys, I loved having him. I thought that he had some really great moments in that second return. Right before COVID stopped everything, he had been starting to play pretty well. He had a great, I think, 13 or 14 assist game against the Spurs when the Cavs had that overtime win and Kevin Love hit his clutch shot. Just for my personal self would be that. I loved the Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance acquisition in real time.
Yeah.
There's kind of rebuilding. Something of a mess of the first half of the season. And I think about LeBron coming back, and I still have mixed feelings from that day because I was one of the Cavs fans that when he left, I wasn't bitter right away. I rooted for him to win one. And after he won those last 2 years, he was my least favorite player in the world. I wasn't booing him. I'm realistic, but I'm cheering against him. I found more joy out of. Yeah, right. And when he comes back, it's like we had these feelings of when he left and what had happened. So how should we feel? So I was getting all these messages. What do you think? What do you think? And it was great that he was making his return, but I felt like the non-LeBron identity was finally forged. They had Kyrie and Dion who overcame whatever drama was. It was fake drama. They were fine. It was all noise. Kyrie signed his extension first day of the summer. Obviously, Hawes and Deng didn't come back, so that was unfortunate with what they gave up to get them. But look, we won a title. There were 4 years of being in the finals, but at the same time, you kind of would have liked to see what if Anthony Bennett had another year? What if Andrew Wiggins ended up being the small forward with Kyrie, Dion, maybe a Bennett type, Varejao, Tristan? How would it work? I think they would have been a 7 or 8 seed that year and kept going, but I guess you can't knock a title when you look back, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you take the good and the bad with LeBron. And every city that LeBron's gone to has had to understand that when he comes in, you have to really mortgage everything you can for that window of years. The thing was he produced. He came through and did what he said he was going to do. He got there. They won that 1 year against Golden State in just dramatic fashion. The Cavs were relevant, and for all that span and just on national TV all the time, it was a great time to be a Cavs fan. Obviously, after he left, there was another deep depression that sunk in, and it was a really rough year after that. I kind of had circled that as one of my least favorite seasons you had asked me about, just because for a while, if your expectations are low, it's easy to not get all that excited. But after having high expectations for 4 or 5 straight years, and then all of a sudden the year after that, it just the bottom falls out of it entirely. And you're like, what is the franchise going to be? Obviously we're in a good place now, but it's taken, the rebuild actually went a lot better than it could have, right? In reality, after LeBron left, it could have been uglier than it was, and the Cavs are in a good place now, luckily. But that first year, we didn't know, right? It looked pretty bleak in terms of what things are going to be in Cleveland. So.
Yeah, Ty Lue lasted 6 games. Larry Drew didn't want the job, but he had to take it. And then they had the veterans like Corver and JR who really weren't supposed to be playing, but Ty Lue, excuse me for 1 second here. I got to silence that as well. We both got it. Okay.
All good.
Ringer is off. Call not too important as we come back. To anyone listening, we both had some alarms going off. It's a very exciting time in Cavs as we get into the actual season. But you look back, it was a weird time, but it eventually led to JB coming home. First, we had to go through John Beeline, thugs and slugs, and then we get JB Bickerstaff, of course, same initials, and then finally, eventually, we're here, or where we're at. And we're going to get to this season, but a little bit more in the past here, Dan.
Sure. Let's talk past.
Favorite underperforming Cavs. So guys they brought in with expectation they'd be great. They weren't, but you still enjoyed watching them play nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had Sean Kemp circled there too. Boy, there's a lot of them. I guess if you want to go back through, one of the things you'd asked me too was Tristan Thompson versus Varejao, and I'm a Varejao guy. I know Tristan Thompson was a gutsy player and did a lot of good things, but I don't think really ever lived up to like what he was supposed to be in terms of a performer. He was a rebounder, was never a great defender. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of circling around your question a little bit, but I had bigger hopes for Tristan Thompson in terms of what he would be in his career, and obviously he's kind of out. I mean, I don't even know if he's on a roster right now. If he's
Not right now.
like,
We had the one game with the Lakers, and then he surprisingly got minutes in the closeout games last year against
yeah,
Denver. Certainly, I
I
was
mean,
happy, but I was surprised as well.
yeah. I mean, he kind of just never really worked on. He was a great offensive rebounder when he was younger, and was good for boards and points and boards, but he just wasn't really a rim protector and never really polished that offensive game either to where he could be a consistent scorer. He was kind of disappointment for me. The one guy I had circled for like least favorite Cavs player, and he wasn't like supposed to be an impact player, but I never liked Sasha Pavlovich, man. That guy, I hated him. I thought he sucked, and they constantly played him, and he just wasn't. He was never that good. He was supposed to be this knockdown shooter and this really good Euro player who's going to really be good up. And I just never got the vibe that he was a great competitor or really into it. They were just trying to always make him happen, and he never did it for me. I was never a fan of his.
So you guess you could venture to say, even though he didn't get as much playing time and only got a year, that Sergei Karasov will be the slightly more modern version of Sasha for the Cavs careers, right?
Yeah, I could see some similarities there for sure.
I was excited about Sergei too. No, Pavlovich is fair. Guys I liked that underperformed, honestly. I did like Flip Murray. I know his playoff performance was a big dud.
Me too.
But not too many guys that aren't D1 really make the league, especially now. So to see him go from Shaw, who I believe might have been D3 at the time. I know they're Division II now, same school as Lakers champ Devin George. It was cool to just see him in the league. And then I didn't like him at all, but Broderick Thomas, also Division II, getting to play. His tenure was a little rocky. I think he's out of the league now. He spent 2 years ago. He was with Boston. Maybe another underperformer that I liked would be I didn't hate IT, honestly. I was very excited for his debut. I like him as a guy. It's not a great situation post-injury, and expectations for him were way too high.
And he never was the same again since he came to the Cleveland. I mean, he was awesome in Boston, and like obviously that trade never really worked out and materialized. And if he had even been like 75% of the player he was in Boston, it would have been okay, but he just was never the same.
Yeah, and then he ended up after the Cavs, Lakers, Nuggets, Wizards, Pelicans, Mavericks, Hornets, and Lakers. He was all over the place. The thing I did enjoy at the least, he was good for Charlotte 2 years ago and did get some playing minutes as they got smoked by Indiana by the time that ended. Obviously, I'd go Varejao over Tristan as well. I think both guys brought a lot.
Now, can I ask you about Varejao? Do you think his reputation as being a flopper was warranted, or was he just a good defensive player?
People never called Udonis Haslem a flopper. Those are two of the best charge drawers ever. No one calls Jetty a flopper, and he's also
because of the hair. It's because of the hair and the lengthy body. Hair. Like Udonis Haslem was like a solid dude, but like Varejao's out there, all arms, legs, and hair. So when he flops, he's like throwing his arms. I mean, I think it was all about the sideshow Bob kind of,
Oh, those moves were funny back in the day. But no, I look back at the Varejao Thompson debate. I see Varejao was a late round pick who was acquired and sent to Cleveland. Tristan Thompson was the draft bro with Kyrie, 4th overall. I look at Tristan's career, great rebounder, had a couple of really high quality offensive games where he was actually able to score in addition to rebound. That random 35-point game against Detroit comes to mind. And I think about Varejao and his first tenure with LeBron, he was great. He served the role, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, and he was high quality. I think he was an All-NBA second-team defense on one occasion. I think both their numbers will be in the rafters when all is said and done, but I think Varejao gave more then. He was around longer, and I know injuries kills the last 6 years that he had. Unfortunately, kind of had maybe we call it Ogalskis syndrome from the beginning of his career with the Cavs bigs that just can't stay on the court, but I think his impact was higher. His 3 on LeBron's birthday outweighs anything Tristan really did in a single moment. And, that moment, LeBron hugging him, the only 3 of his career being that iconic like that. I remember Fred McLeod's call for that still so well. And, look, they're both great. I have the Thompson jersey. I don't have a Varejao jersey, but I really haven't been able to find one. I got the Tristan jersey in 2012. But shout out to both of them. It's fun to go back and forth. And Tristan, kind of like IT, I guess. He's been on the Lakers,
all over the place, yeah.
Celtics, the Pacers, and the Bulls since leaving Cleveland. So it's tough.
I had some respect for Varejao's game. The fact that he was, at least a decent defender, and that he was really good in the pick and roll with LeBron, and he also could facilitate. There was a couple of years when he averaged 2 and 3 assists a game, rebound, assists. Like, he just had a little more to his game. He wasn't super skilled offensively, but he was just, a well-rounded player, and he was a guy that, really, was an important piece for them, in terms of what he offered on the court, offensively, defensively. Just, I don't know, and likable. Like, as far as a fan goes, you definitely wanted to root for the guy.
Oh, and as he got older, that mid-range jumper became beautiful to watch.
He developed that, right? Yeah.
And there was that against a 14-point, 25 rebound game, which I believe was the franchise record for rebounds. I don't think that's been broken yet. I don't think Andre was around. I guess Drummond's another to finish out on the disappointing but
random,
like times. Like, I remember there's a video of him walking us down. Cleveland, what's the word? Let's go. They traded Brandon Knight and John Henson, who are shells of what they were on their previous teams. And they bring this 2-time All-Star, All-NBA big in. And the 8 games were okay. I knew his defense was when he wasn't reaching and getting steals, was pretty bad. And then the next year, it really reached up. Because remember, the Cavs were 3-0 that season. He hit a couple of big free throws, I think, in the Detroit game. And obviously, they ended up going 22-50. They went 19-50 after the start. It reminds me of the MCW Sixers of 13-14. But he ended up getting benched. And I'm just glad for now. Like, I do enjoy the role he has on Chicago. I think if they just use him properly, he can still be a threat like he was in the play-in last year.
Guys like him, they're kind of a dinosaur. They're a dying breed in the NBA, but there's a role for them off the bench. I know, the JaVale McGee types and the DeAndre Jordan types, these guys that are literally just, guys who can rebound and dunk and don't have a whole lot of other stuff to offer. They're still valuable as 7-footers off the bench. They have a hard time playing those guys 30 minutes a night in the modern NBA. You just have to be able to do more at the center position. You either have to pass or be able to shoot or be an elite, rim protector or whatever. You can't just be the big rebounder anymore. It's just not part of the league,
And if you're going to, then you better be able to get yourself out and guard the perimeter. You're not doing that.
Right.
You will not close games anymore.
Right. Even like a guy like Rudy Gobert sometimes ends up on the bench to close out games, and he's, probably the best guy in the league at doing that right now. So, anyways.
European Rudy's a different story. Obviously, France got absolutely torched this year, but we'll see how the next couple games go. Schroeder shot 4 for 26 and was laughing at himself after the game. I don't know why he shot 26 times if he only made 4, but you know what?
He's never met a shot he didn't like. Dennis Schroeder's never met a shot he didn't like. Let's be honest.
Well, he's Canada's problem once this cup ends. So let the Raptors deal with it as they try and potentially move Pascal and some other pieces. They're going to be an interesting team.
They're going to be bad. Don't worry.
I'm excited for their. I forgot. Darko is the new head coach they brought in, who has a coach that is ahead in the NBA, but does bring a lot of experience. So it's always cool. Maybe he'll be the next. There's another coach out there. Maybe he could be the next Nick Nurse for them. Honestly, brings this experience. Never been a head coach, but we're not here to talk about the Raptors. The Raptors after Gary Trent incident.
I'm still mad at the Raptors because Scotty Barnes beat out Evan Mobley for Rookie of the Year. A bunch of BS.
He technically beat him out, but he didn't beat him out in the hearts of the fans outside of Canada. If you ask any of the other 29 teams, but nonetheless, it is what it is. Donovan should have beaten Simmons as well. People think Embiid should have beaten Brogdon, but the award means nothing. And funny enough, they couldn't decide between Kidd and Grant Hill back in the day, so they just let them be co-rookies of the year. They couldn't decide that. I guess they can now. That's the difference.
That's very weird. Yeah, you're right.
All right, anyway, a couple more things here. So Cavs have changed their logo quite a few times over the years. Dan, you got all the options. What would you say is your favorite Cavs logo?
I actually have the weird one that from wow, this is weird, but when they went in the I guess it would be the late '90s, early 2000s to the blue and orange.
Mm-hmm.
It's the what I'm talking about. So it's the baby blue
Yeah, with
Cavs
the
with the
black and
orange
the ball going
basketball.
through the net, right?
Yes, I know it's the worst era of not the worst era, but it's not the best era of Cavs basketball. But that's actually my favorite logo, and I really like those throwback jerseys, the baby blue and orange.
Oh, I loved when they brought those back.
Yeah, I'm not like a huge wine and gold guy. Like I know it's the classic thing, and it's kind of their look now. I just really love those the blue and orange. And if you want to go back to the Larry Nance and Brad Daugherty days, I really like the blaze orange and blue too. But the whole wine and gold thing, I know it's not going anywhere now, but I really prefer the blue and orange.
And how'd you feel about the city editions? The year after 2018, LeBron was gone. They had the icy one, so it was like all light white and blue, and then the blue and orange kind of split color. How'd you feel about those?
Yeah, I love anytime they bring some of that color back in there. I just like the contrast looks really sharp and good. The the wine, the red just throws things off a little bit, and I don't know. It's just my own personal taste in the colors. I like that. It just has more of a classic. Probably has to do with my nostalgia from the time following them when I was a kid or a teenager. Watching them play. Maybe that just has a lot to do with it.
And I liked the orange. I remember when they brought him back a few times in LeBron's first tenure. What I liked about that, jerseys worked a little differently then, but I remember they brought back some orange. They had those blue Cat Fanatic jerseys.
Yeah.
First tenure. I know they had them in the second as well. And then they did a little yellow, which I actually really enjoyed too. I remember they used to rock those a lot of the times in the ABC Sunday games back when Sunday ABC used to dominate right after NFL. I don't know why it's gone. I don't like Saturday nights. I loved Sundays at the 3:30 doubleheaders. The intro before then, they play Right Now. Right Now might have been J-Lo. No, I don't remember who the singer was. They play Right Now, and they'd have the players walking through. Cheerleaders are on both sides. Players kind of walk through. It was almost like Sunday Night Football type.
It was very cool. Yeah, I don't know. You're right. That was awesome. I grew up watching NBA on Sundays and on the weekends. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
National TV.
Absolutely, those are the days. And on my jersey side, I'd probably agree. I always just love I like the all orange.
Yeah,
they have the
a little much on the eyes to adjust, but yeah, good stuff though.
We'll see. City editions have been okay. Those are my favorites from 4 years ago. I didn't get a jersey, but I still have a Kevin Love tee in the orange with the script font from that year. We'll see. We'll see. They're becoming collectibles because they're all 1 year jerseys. So you got to really decide if it's worth it or you want to get something that you'll actually wear for a couple of years. But I'm curious how this year goes. They last year was okay on the city, so I guess we'll see what happens this time around with it. And I
got my Kevin Love jersey. I got my Kyrie jersey. I'm kind of trying to wait to see and debating what I go with next in terms of from this next crew I want to invest in. But
I have a Darius jersey, but I didn't get the logo one because they have the half off where you don't have the actual logo on it. But then the neck was a little weird, so I haven't actually worn it yet. And then I also, in the jersey collection, I have a Dellavedova. I don't really wear the LeBrons anymore. I have Daniel Gibson, Tristan Thompson.
Daniel Gibson, there you go.
Yeah, I love that. Was for 15th birthday. I think
number 1, right? Wasn't he number 1?
Oh yeah, I love that jersey so much. That's probably. I have some weird ones. I have a DeAndre Clippers. I got a Wiggins Minnesota. I have a Kid Gilchrist Bobcats in there.
Kid Gilchrist, wow.
$10 NBA store. They just wanted to get rid of it. I don't know. They probably don't know why they sold it in the first place. No offense. He wasn't terrible, but that draft Melo dropped 61 on him, and he had 4 and 4. So that graphic makes him look worse. But a good defender, just never lived up to being
good defender. If you just didn't want to watch him shoot a jump shot, good Lord, that looked like it. I don't know how. Yeah. Oh God, it was horrible. They never fixed him. Yep.
Funnily enough, we've seen many weird. Actually, here's the question: does the jump shot beat Joakim Noah's, who has a prettier shot?
Oh, I mean, at least it went in though. Like
sometimes
Noah shot it weird, but at least he could make a 15-footer. Like, MKG could not make anything outside of 8 to 10 feet to save his life. It was bad. It was just broken.
No, there was a game I remember, one of his final years in Charlotte. He was coming off injury. He hit two threes in a game, I think both from the corner. And I was watching, the NBA was like, oh my God, Kid Gilchrist hitting threes. Like, Ben Simmons, take notes. But nonetheless, we dive back into Cavs. A couple more things to look into. Talked about your least favorite season kind of being that first post-LeBron second time, right? Where you're kind of coming back down from the high of 4 straight finals. Yeah. So I wouldn't go any of the losing years post-LeBron. It might have honestly been one of the final 2 years the Warriors decimated us, the Cavs in the finals, because you go through the season with these expectations, you have all this talent, whether it's been there or not, and you've won, but you have almost no chance. It's like Game 7 against the Celtics in 2018 felt like a championship based on how that was going, the way that the home team had really dominated the series. The Cavs had their moment. They delivered. But that almost felt like the best they were going to get, because you knew as soon as Game 1 ended and they had the blunder at the end of the fourth, they're not going to get that back. That game might have given them momentum to pull off one of the bigger upsets you've ever seen. But those years were tough. I enjoyed the rebuild because I think for me, the first time, that glued me to the fandom. And then the second time, that it kind of reminded me again that LeBron could do whatever he wants. I love this team. I always support this team. And it only makes me a bigger fan whether it's defending them in conversations with people that don't understand if they're not a fan, or just staying true to what you've done and not following a player, which people do, and that's fine if they're a generational talent like LeBron is. That hasn't been me since I was maybe 9 or 10, with that said.
Yeah, I mean, people want to root. You're allowed to root for whoever you want to and your own teams. I mean, I've loved this organization and this team, and for a number of different reasons, over the years. And the fan base has always been a passionate one, a loyal one. The Cavs just have had something special, I think, even though in those down years, and that they are, a really fun organization to follow. I mean, every organization has ups and downs, right? No team is good for 20 or 30 straight years. But they keep finding a way to put it to get back together. And I mean, that's what you want to do. You're going to have cycles, right? You're going to have rebuilding years, but here we go. 3, 4 down years, not even, right? Like really 2, 3 down years, and they're back. And it feels like, and I don't want to jinx it, right? But it feels like they have a nice window of 3 or 4 years with young talent. And that's, what else can you really ask for as a fan base? Like you want to be in contention every so often and have an opportunity to do something special and to keep following, and that keeps you through those lulls of the rebuilding years,
And you think about Darius and Donovan both still being young. Donovan's still a year away from entering his official prime. Garland coming off a quietly great season. People thought he had a down year. His numbers were identical in almost every area to the pre-Mitchell All-Star season. You got Evan Mobley coming into year 3. You got his brother, who looking like he could sneak in as a threat off the bench. The team added Amani Bates, Max Strus, George Niang, Damian Jones, Ty Jerome. All 5 of these guys, I think, at some point, season have an impact. Craig Porter, another candidate. They did lose out in the JaVale sweepstakes. He went to Sacramento. They lost out in the Christian Wood sweepstakes. He went to L.A. Kelly Oubre and a few other bigs do remain if they want to solidify that bench. But this Cavs team, as we get to the question, is certainly one, Dan Palyo, that has a chance to win a title. So with that said, what do the Cavs have to do? And yes, it's going to be a long shot, but for it to happen, what would the Cavs need to do this season?
So this is the first, I have like a 2-part answer. The first answer is a kind of a cop-out thing that you might hear any analyst say about any team at the beginning of the year. They got to stay healthy. All right. They got to keep the core of group of guys together healthy all season. But I do think they are, there's really nowhere to go but up, right? Expectations are high, but to me, like coming off a 51 win season, like that's the floor, like that's the baseline. Like they're going to be that good. There's really nowhere they got worse in terms of their personnel. They have young players who are rising and getting better, where you said, whether it's Darius or, I mean, Evan Mobley I think, a superstar in the making. Like, he literally is just scratching the surface of what he can become. And so they stay healthy and they just continue on the upward progression that they're on. Like, to me, 51 wins is easy. We're talking about 54, 55 wins. We're talking about pushing up into that conversation for a top 3 seed, top 2 seed, maybe even if they can, win some of those tough games. And then now they're entering the postseason. I know last year was disappointing going out in the first round. And it was just really a bad matchup, and really just maybe a little bit of showing their lack of experience in that series. And they got a little bit out-muscled, out-physical by New York. But if they can come in with a full year of dominating and being a top 2 seed or top 3 seed in the conference, then they have a shot, right? And they just have to win a couple tough playoff series and get there. So the first part is just staying healthy. All right. Second part is, at some point in the season, they're gonna get a sense of what they need to take them over the top. I do think they're gonna need to make a trade at some point, right? Like, this group of guys that they have clearly is good. I mean, at some point in the offseason, there was all this talk about, will they make a deal here or there? There were some rumors about Jared Allen going somewhere or bringing in a wing. I do think there's still a huge question. I know Max Strus is a nice add. There's still a huge question, that small forward, right? Like, are they going to be okay with Max Strus and kind of just LeVert coming off the bench and playing 3 guards? And I mean, at some point, do they make a move to get like a legitimate, starting kind of, maybe not all-star potential, but what I mean, like a number 3 kind of scorer, or a number, a guy who's a knockdown shooter, or is a legit wing player who can fit in around their bigs, and they're obviously 2 all-star guards. Or if they have a really good season and they're finding that they're okay on the wings, do they, flip like a Jared Allen for another player, impact player or something? I do think that at some point it's going to come a time in the season where they have to decide, do they make a big deal, a big splashy deal, or is there some kind of role player out there? It feels like they've tried the role player thing a few times, and that they might need a little more than just a role player to get them over the top. I don't know if you feel that same way about it, because they're super balanced a lot of times, a lot of nights. Sometimes some nights Donovan has to take over and stuff, but it'd be nice to not have to rely on, if Darius is having an off night, Donovan carrying them with 40 or 50 points. It'd be nice to have another guy who can step up and score 25 or 30 points on any given night. And Mobley and Allen aren't those guys. They're not scorers, like, if it's not Darius and then it's not Donovan, like, who else? I mean, maybe Karras off the bench can do that, but not consistently. And I don't think that's where he's in his best. I think he's better at being a defender, facilitator, and not have to worry about scoring a lot of points. I'll shut up because I just talked a whole lot, but
I do trust this roster personally, as is coming in. I trust the experience of Strus and Niang to be the shooters. That is mostly what they'll do. Strus has shown ability to go off the dribble. I think he's going to create a lot of problems for defenses just with his ability to move around the perimeter, kind of what they had in Kyle Korver. And I'm not comparing. Korver is obviously a better shooter, but Strus did just hit 197 threes a season ago. Yeah. And with that in mind, he built up from 181. He's only been a full-time rotation player for 2 years, and he made almost 400 threes. So I think he could come in and do that as a starter. We'll see what happens with Jared Allen. My hope is that it works out for another couple of years. They don't, because if they end up going Evan at the 5, they already have depth problems at the big position. So you trade one of your 2 all-star caliber bigs who just got there a year prior, then I think you're thinning yourself a little too much. Now, the only way I would consider trading Allen is if there was another guy who could slot in next to Evan in space. It would have to be for a stretch guy. And if you're going to – and if you're going to acquire another wing, you have to include Karras LeVert in that trade, because you don't want to have – or Isaac, unfortunately, or probably not Strus. He just came in, but you can't have too many, because you want to make – you could go deep, but Karras, I think, still has to be a 6th or 7th man at worst. He's got too much potential to sit anywhere lower. I guess depending what they do, we'll see. Obviously, they could decide to trade a Dean Wade, or when Rubio comes back. Hopefully he's good and he's able to return. He's been playing pro ball half his life. I dealt with a lot, so I'm glad he's taking his time to just get himself together. But every player on that team outside of maybe of the new acquisitions plus Donovan, Darius, and Evan could be had. So I guess we'll see. I want them to keep it together. I get very attached to every player we have. I'm not sure I'm not the only Cavs fan, so I find it hard to part. I'm going to miss Jetty tremendously. I can't believe Lamar Stevens is still a free agent.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But
yeah, I mean, Jetty was a fan favorite, but I mean, I think it was the writing was on the wall.
it was a good trade to get Max Strus. He's been there, he's delivered, and hopefully he's not getting benched for no reason. I think Jetty also had confidence problems because he didn't know what his role was going to be. And if you look at when he played 15 plus minutes last year, I think the Cavs are 15 or 20 games over 500, and when he didn't, they were way worse.
Yeah. So I think Max Strus, one thing about him I do like is he is an athlete. He's an athletic guy. He's not just a spot up shooter. He can take, there's some videos circulating of him in practice going off the dribble, and he hasn't really had a chance to really thrive in that role. Like Miami didn't really even use him in that role too much. They really just had him as a spot up shooter. He's a decent defender. He's a guy that can do it. I certainly am giving him every opportunity. I'm just thinking in order to take them over the top in a series against Milwaukee or whoever it's going to be who's blocking them, the Bostons of the world, like, do they just need a little more star power in terms of guys? Max Strus could easily go out and drop 25 points in a night, but he's also a guy that, even for Miami, when you see it on their stretch run, he disappeared some nights, just totally kind of didn't do anything. So I don't know. I do like the way they put things together in the offseason. I think they are going to have a fantastic year. Hopefully they stay healthy, and hopefully they're in a position to even entertain some of those discussions, like maybe trading Leffert to upgrade somewhere. Hopefully they have that flexibility by that time of the season.
It is safe to say that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have an incredible season that we'll be looking back on 5 to 10 years from now with smiles on our faces, excitement in our eyes, and energy in our voices describing it. So, Dan Palyo, my final question. Cavs are projected 50.5. I got them going over. I have somewhere between 53 and 56. If they're healthy, I think they're capable. And I think that they've got what it takes to do that in the regular season.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's a bet I think already. I maybe even made it. I'm not sure where it opened, but it was one of those bets I was waiting for when it opened up because I was always going to be over on it. They're just on an upward trajectory. Darius could be really special this year. Donovan is an incredible player to watch. They're only going to be better with more experience together now, finally having a full season under their belt together. And I'm telling you, Evan Mobley is just like, if his offensive game evolves and he's able to really start knocking down perimeter shots, and when you watch him take guys off the dribble with his size and the fact that he can pass, and he's already so gifted defensively, like he's a really special talent. I mean, I think they have, a really good foundation there with him, and with this whole core is really. I mean, Jared Allen's got to get tougher. I think that's the knock on him, is like he can't get beat up by other big men. He's got to be a little tougher and be that presence in there. But I really like Jared Allen too. I mean, they're doing something with two bigs that most teams in the league aren't doing anymore, and that's what makes them unique. And it gives them size advantage, it gives them a rebounding advantage. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. The whole point is they're cruising over 50.5 wins. They're going to be a top 4 team at least, and hopefully we'll see in the finals.
Home court advantage, no Knicks. Sounds like a great recipe for a big Cavs playoff run. Dan Palyo, a pleasure to bring you on, and I ask you now as we wrap up, where can we find your work, and where can we find you on social media so we can hit you up?
Yeah, check me out. I'm at Thunder Dan DFS. I cover basketball, football, baseball, but I'll be ramping up my basketball coverage in a few weeks here. We got football starting tonight, and so a whole lot of football stuff going on. But we check out my work at rotoballer.com. But you can find all that stuff in my profile at Thunder Dan DFS. Thanks so much, Zach, for having me on. This was a blast, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. At Thunder Dan DFS, find Tim at Across Cavs. Find me at network_216 for everything Browns, guards, Cavs, you name it. He's Dan, Zach Weiss, and we will see you next week. Tim Alcorn joins the show on